Yeah, all righty then. 2 years ago when we first started 20 Books Vegas, we asked Dave Chesson of KDP Rocket. Now it's called Publisher Rocket. Yes. Dave Chesson, he believed in us, and he raced right out here on his own dime. He paid his conference fee, and he gave a great presentation, and we've been big Dave Chesson fans ever since. So without further ado, Dave Chesson.
Well, I just want to say thank you guys so much for having me here. For a lot of you, you know that I was supposed to be here last year, but we had a bit of a family crisis. Right before coming, my 18-year-old daughter, yes, I've got an 18-year-old daughter. I know. She was at college and her appendix burst, and so she was in the hospital for 2 weeks. My wife had to fly out to go see her, and I stayed with the two youngins. And it was incredible because of what you guys did for support, as well as Craig and the team. Brian Meeks, I want to give a special shout out to him for being able to cover me. But to anybody who missed out on that, I just want to say I'm very sorry and more than happy to make it up in any way. I also wanted to put a final chapter to it too. My daughter, when she got out of the hospital, she was actually there on a scholarship for softball, and they pretty much wrote her off for the year, saying that she had major complications. She had tubes coming out of her for a good month and a half. She came home for Christmas. She's like, no, I'm going to get back into shape. I'm going to do this. And so really proud dad moment. That she got out there and she had one incredible year. Yeah. So. She not only got the start for her team, she also was runner-up for the league MVP as a freshman. So really jazzed as a dad. But I know that's not what you guys are here for. But instead, though, we're going to talk about a process that I think is really important for people to understand, and it's actually 3 steps to keywords, not just one. A lot of authors will jump into keywords and say, I'm going to choose some words, I'm going to throw them into my box, to the 7 Kindle boxes, and that's it. And things are going to happen. And sometimes that does happen. But a lot of times that doesn't, because there's this 3rd step, which is improving rankings. We did a study analyzing exactly what happens on Amazon when people do a search. Okay? They go to Amazon, they type something in, Amazon presents them with a list of books in this case, and we found that statistically speaking, the book that shows up at the top gets 27% of the clicks, while number 2 only gets 12%. And as you can see, that line gets smaller and smaller. So rankings really have a really big effect. Even more so, just kind of explain it here with a bit of a visual, is you've got 27, 12, 9, 8, and 7. So book number 1 gets 2 more clicks. And we can do a little bit of math. Sorry, I know it's early. But if the keyword you're ranking for gets 1,000 searches per month, and you rank number 5, statistically speaking, you can only expect about 70 clicks to come from that keyword. Whereas if you rank number 1, you get 270 clicks. That's a huge difference, okay? So again, to do this properly, we need to identify the right keywords. We need to get index for those keywords. That means convince Amazon to make our book show up somewhere. And then we need to convince Amazon to improve our rankings. Now, a lot of people would say that this process is sort of, nobody really knows the answer to this, that people are kind of, guessing. But this process I'm going to show you is actually one that Amazon itself has promoted. They actually liked this discussion. They were telling authors publicly to do this. He's right. This is the correct way to increase your optimization, to be found more, how to discover the right keywords. And even more so, the picture on the bottom there is after I published an article that was focused on this area, they changed their FAQ section for useful keyword types to reflect exactly what I wrote, almost word for word. So, okay, we'll take it. So before we jump into that, let's look at what exactly are keywords. Okay? And by the way, they're very different between fiction and nonfiction. I promise you I'll cover both separately because they need to be separated. But generally speaking, keywords are the words your target reader is looking for. They're the words they use to find the book that they want. Now, with nonfiction, it's about pain points. It's about needing results, the solution. What is it they hope to gain? It's the emotional response behind it. Is it a excruciating pain, or is it a numbing pain, right? Is it a exhilaration to be able to fit into that bathing suit by summer, or is it just be able to get by? And then finally, demographics. How do they describe themselves, right? Do I want a book on how to teach college kids to do something, or do I want a book on how to teach infants? Where am I in my stage? What book fits to me? Okay? With fiction, it's not about pain points. It's about being entertained, and how do we describe the story that we want that helps us to be entertained. And you can break this down into time periods and settings, character types and roles, plot themes and special events, and style and tone of genre. We'll get into those more specifically in a bit. So we need to identify our target keywords. Step one, right? How do we do that? Well, I like to start with a sheet of paper. And I like to, in this case, we're going to start with nonfiction. And I will create 4 different columns. And in those 4 columns, I will put at the top pain points and process, results and solutions, emotions and reason why, and demographics. Next, I'll start coming up with different ways to describe those things. And I promise you, if you really sit and you think about it, you will come up with some incredible stuff. For this example, I came up with ideas on going back to school. Okay? How do you go back to school to get your education? Through this process, I was able to quickly see that this really needs to be tailored towards a certain type or a demographic. Is it a GED, a master's, a college education? Who is it? Is it for a retired person, somebody climbing up the corporate ladder? Is it someone who just needs to get this job and a check in the box? Why do they want to go to college? As you can see, it's a really great brainstorming process. And I assure you, you'll find different synonyms and ways to say things, and you can really create an effective and long list quickly. Fiction, on the other hand, we're going to use 5 columns, and it will be settings and time periods, character types, roles, and abilities, plot theme, special situations and events, and story tone. Let's break down those 5 because I know that they're not very intuitive. The first is settings and time periods. Think about where your book takes place. Where and when? Are we talking about the Victorian age, medieval, modern, Western? And remember, there's like 5, 6, 7, 8 different ways to say each of those things I said. Another thing I would say, too, is that I've had a lot of authors who are like, excuse me, but my book took place in 1836, 1 year before the Victorian era started, so technically it's not Victorian era. True. But this is about what your ideal market thinks, and I'm pretty sure, how many people knows exactly when the Victorian period started? The romance authors, some of them, right? Just a couple. But I would say a mass majority of your market would not know the exact time period from, 1837 to 1901? Right? And then, it's 1902, it's Edwardian time period. No. Okay, it really comes down to what does your market think? Next, we have character types, roles, and abilities. Okay, is it a billionaire? Is it a Amish woman? Is it a shapeshifter? Is it a single mother? Who is your protagonist? How do you describe them? What makes them special? Why are they the center of your story? Sometimes you can do an antagonist, but I would recommend not. It's rare that that actually is the thing people strive for. Usually they want to look at who their hero is. Is it an anti-hero? Is it a rogue, Plot themes. How do you generally describe the plot itself? Is it a summer beach vacation, a fling? Is it an entanglement of love? Is it a war-torn loss? Is it interracial marriage or relationship in that respect? And coupling these things with a time period really drive exactly what kind of story we're talking about, right? Civil War, lost love. We can pretty much start to imagine that, coupling that with that book cover. Another thing, too, is special situations and events. What's the catalyst? What starts the journey? What starts the story? Is it a war that breaks out? Is it being lost and trying to find? Is it a kidnapping? What creates the story to start, okay? One thing for the post-apocalyptic people out there, what kind of apocalypse was it? Was it a zombie outbreak? Was it a disease? Was it World War, Holocaust? Different ways start that story. And finally, and this one's a really important one too, is what is the flavor or the tone of your genre? In this case, I've chosen romance, and we can go from left to right from almost a wholesome to steamy level as we go to the right? We have maybe like a Christian romance, a nice wholesome romance, tender love, and then we're starting to get into the erotica area, and it goes probably even further than what I've got up there. But the point is that there are certain readers who would never touch an erotica because they're a Christian romance person. And believe me, they've probably done some searches and got some erotica or some steamy stuff in front of them, so they're going to vehemently put something in there, in their keyword, to ensure they don't see that. So how you describe your genre, your story, the tone of it, will really reflect who gets to see your book, okay? So we've developed our fiction list, okay? And in this case, I'm totally doing sci-fi military because I'm a big military nerd. What can I say? So now that we have this giant list, we need to move into step 2, which is checking to see which of these keywords really would benefit our book. So what makes for a good keyword? Well, there's 3 things. The first is words that shoppers actually use when they're on Amazon. The second is words that shoppers use to buy, because let's face it, we don't want to show up for words that shoppers never make a decision for. An example of that, by the way, is like, say, for example, science fiction. What are the chances that somebody goes to Amazon and types in science fiction and Amazon's able to produce the best book for them? Like, oh my God, they got it. I wanted Starship Troopers mixed with aliens, and there it is. Not going to happen. So they probably do that search, and they'll quickly search to something else, and something else, and something else, until they finally have quantified a search term that actually shows what they want, okay? Final, and third is words that aren't too competitive. We talked about rankings. You're not going to benefit from a keyword if you're ranking 478, when statistically speaking, number 1 is getting the most clicks. So how do we do this? Well, the first one is that you can always use Amazon's own search bar to show you what other people have typed. You can start typing in some of the words or phrase that you listed on that sheet of paper, and Amazon will start presenting you some ideas. These are things that they're trying to guess at what you write by showing you what other people have finished the search with. So you can even add to your list as you go through this, but verify that what you're typing in might actually show up. If it doesn't show up, it's probably not a good keyword. Once you have those, you want to go ahead and check the first couple of books, I would say the top 3 books that show up for that ranking, and see if they're actually making money, if they're actually selling. You can do this by scrolling down to the Amazon bestseller rank for that book, take it, and you can put it into this free calculator. You just go to Google and type Kindle calculator, and it will convert that Amazon bestseller rank into the number of books that day, okay? So if you are doing this, you'll see that, hey, books that are here are making money, so this is a good indication that this is still a good keyword. Now, finally, we have to do a subjective opinion, okay? We have to say to ourselves, can we beat these top 3 books, all right? Look at things like, is the author famous? How many reviews do they have? How popular is the book? How good is the book cover? I mean, if it's amazing, that's one thing, but if the book cover is horrendous and it looks like it's clip art, or $5 on Fiverr, that's a good opportunity. So you need to take a look at some of these things and start to ask yourself, do they truly belong there? Can I do better? And if so, then great. Now, Publisher Rocket, our software, kind of does exactly those 3 things. We've labeled them there. The ones, it shows the searches it shows the words that people have typed into Amazon, so it pulls that for you. It'll also tell you how many searches per month that occur for that term, so that way you can actually have a number. Under number 2, it actually tells you the average amount of money that books are making for that keyword term. And number 3, we've actually been able to calculate competitive value from 1 to 100, with 1 being ridiculously easy to rank for and 100 being may the force be with you. Okay? So let's kind of look at what this looks like when you actually start to compare the numbers so we can see a little bit more about the market and understand it. Well, let's look at this one on parenting, right? We talked about what is our pain point, what we want to teach our kids or we want to be better parents, but also the demographic, because let's face it, a book on parenting teenage girls is going to be completely different than parenting teenage boys. More so, toddlers and ADHD. I'm not sure if parent ADHD means parents have ADHD, or you're going to see some weird terms that people type in. But let's face it, we're never grammatically correct when we're searching on Amazon. Finally, there's How to Parent a Strong-Willed Child. And believe me, if you've got a child like mine, you know that's an important book. But let's go into science fiction. We go down the line. We go from science fiction, sci-fi, military, Space Marines, bug hunt. Now notice that, yes, you're going from something extremely broad with more money and more searches, but way more competitive, and you start to get closer to a better description of what your book truly is about. You may be asking yourself, what is Space Marine bug hunt? Well, Space Marine bug hunt is where you've got a whole bunch of the Space Marines, so we're talking war here. Bug hunt. If you don't know the movie Alien or Aliens, they're referred to as bugs sometimes. You also have like Starship Troopers who refer to the alien species there as bugs as well. So it's synonymous with a mass horde of antagonists coming down upon the Marines. It's crazy, I know, but for the Space Marine bug hunt people like myself, we know what that means. We know exactly what that book's going to entail. And if I type in Space Marine bug hunt, I know that Amazon's going to present me with the kind of book I'm looking for. Apparently, there's only like 124 of us, But whatever. The fact is that I assure you that there's going to be higher conversion rates on those books than there will be if I type in sci-fi military, because who knows if it's going to show my kind of sci-fi military, right? So don't be discouraged by that 124, because I promise you that a higher number of that 124 will probably be purchasing on that search than would be for the word science fiction, okay? So, but we can go even further, and we can start looking at just the difference on the way we describe one character. Here are just 6 different ways to describe a man with magic, okay? And yes, gender specific in this case. But the fact of the matter is that we know that a sorcerer is completely different than, say, a mage and a warlock, or I think necromancer is another one that I should have put up there. They're all completely different, that's true. But see how different it is in the searchers. Mage seems to be the most legit opportunity in that respect. So how we actually describe our main characters plays a role. If we go into combinations here, okay, where we're talking about a type of romance mixed in with some type of situation, you can see we can really get into some good opportunity. Second chance romance with baby is one of my favorite examples, because you're probably thinking, who in their right mind typed that in? Like, let me guess, is that 795 people who haven't had their coffee put that in there? And it makes sense when you break it down, because say, for example, I'm trying to look for a second chance romance book, and maybe I already typed that in, okay? And I hit search, and Amazon showed me a whole bunch of steamy romance. And I'm like, oh man, this is not what I'm going for. So I go back up to the search, and I start adding some words, and I'm thinking at the last moment, like, I want something that's more centered around like family, and a single mother, and oh, she has baby, so with baby. And they throw in this crazy weird word in here, and sure enough, now they start to seek wholesome, family-related second chance romance, where it's not about she's finding love again, but instead she's finding someone who wants to be a part of the family. That's a completely different story, okay? And finally, we can even go more so into the combination of the type of romance as well as character roles. In this case, billionaire, millionaire, alpha male, possessive alpha male, rich man. Apparently there's like a thing for rich men. I don't know. So now that we have our list of words and we've started to identify which ones seem to be really good and beneficial for our book, okay, we circle them. Now we need to basically work to get them indexed. We want our book to show up for these. We want to convince Amazon to say, we acknowledge your book should show up somewhere in our rankings for this term. How do we do this? Well, there are 6 definite ways to get Amazon to index your book. Now, I have proof on each one of these 6. These are not conjecture. They're not things that I made up. I found where Amazon actually specifically says that these 6 things work. However, though, the first 2 I think are by far the most important, and 95% of the time, those are all you would ever need in order to get you to be indexed. And honestly, just number 2. So title and subtitle, I think, are very important. We'll talk about that a bit later when we talk about rankings. And no, I'm not talking about keyword stuffing, I promise you. I'm like as more against that as most people. But we are going to talk about making sure that you don't confuse the shopper, okay? Keyword metadata. This is where when you go to Amazon, okay, and you go to publish your book and they have those 7 boxes, the 7 Kindle keyword boxes. Now, an interesting fact is that each one of those boxes allows you to put 50 characters inside of it. So there's always been this question between people of whether or not they should just stuff as many words and phrases into those boxes to fill up their 50, or should they be very specific? Well, at Kindlepreneur, a month ago, we did a study. And by the way, if you were one of the ones who submitted your book for the study, I owe you a drink. Please find me. I would love to give you a drink for that, or cookie, or coffee, or whatever. But there were 121 amazing people that allowed us to do this experiment. And what we did was they sent us their 7 keyword phrases that they put in the box. Then we looked at them, and we had them change them. And we started to test to see what would happen if they changed them to fill the box or to make it more specific. We designed a crawler to actually check Amazon and see what Amazon did after they did these. Where did they rank? What did they rank for? And here's what we found. We found that the more words you put inside that box, the more you indexed. You showed up for more words. We also found that Amazon doesn't just take the exact phrase, but it actually mix and matches all the different words to find opportunities to put you in there. That's why literally you could go from 50 characters and start indexing for 100 words in just because of one box. But, there is a downside to this. Because when you put more words into that box, your initial rankings actually drop. Okay, and we call that like density issues, okay? So there is a plus side and a negative side to this. So how do we approach the 7 Kindle keyword boxes? Well, I like to start by identifying 2 to 3 phrases that I really, really love. This is truly my book in a nutshell. Second Chance Romance with Baby, that's a great one, right? Space Marine Bug Hunt, that's a great one because we know that that exact phrase of 4 words really do get searched and it really does represent my book, if that's the book you wrote. So I put those in there. Then I go through the rest of the phrases that did not make it and I fill them into those other boxes. So all of a sudden we start having these big ones, okay? And just because I might have selected some of those orange ones up there doesn't mean that I didn't use some of the unselected ones as well. Because these are theme specific and it helps give Amazon a better understanding of what my book really is about. So I will use that list. All right, so like I said, 95% of the time your book will be indexed somewhere in Amazon for that keyword term just by doing that one step right there, okay? So let's move into improve rankings. So we are now showing up somewhere. God only knows, maybe it's like number 700 out of 1 million or whatever, but we are there. So how do we get Amazon to bump us up to the top? Because remember, the top has a major implication. It's very important. So here are 3. Now, there are actually a lot more things that affect ranking, but here are 3 that are very specific to our books. The first is degree of text match, which we talked about, right? When you use a specific phrase inside of one of those 7 Kindle keyword boxes, you will have a better initial ranking. Number 2 is availability and selection. This is interesting because for books, granted, especially ebooks, we don't run out of availability. However, though, if you are using a printing press or you are using somebody and they have some kind of issue, a run, they're no longer able to print, or they're shipping them in manually and then FBAing them, any of those situations, if your book, the number of books that they have is low, then they're going to drop you. They're going to drop you because there's a higher chance that your book will not be able to sell if a run of people show up. So availability is a major issue. Selection. This actually falls into number 3, which will be the most important one that we're going to talk about. Selection is that how many types of your book do you offer? I am a diehard Audible fan, okay? If you write fiction, and oh my gosh, your book looks amazing, it is totally up my alley, bug hunt all the way, and you don't have an Audible, I'm moving on, okay? And that's not because I'm not a reader, but I like Audible. I like listening to the books. So when you hear people talk about, should you do Audible or not, think about that because you'll lose this sale because you don't have it. Or maybe, let's face it, if you're an erotica reader, okay, do you really want to be sitting on the train with the physical book in your hand, with a steamy picture, or, at work, being a professional and being like, no, but you want that ebook. So the point, though, is think about the different formats that are out there. It will affect the buying habit of your shoppers. So let's talk about conversions, okay? Conversions are really important because when it comes to Amazon, I like to use a simple rule when trying to understand what Amazon will do, and it's what makes Amazon more money, okay? I mean, they're a business. I get it. And sure, they got this flowery stuff that they say, oh, we're here about showing selections and making customers happy. Yeah, right. They're making decisions on what makes them more money. So if you have 1,000 shoppers that type in a keyword, and one book doesn't sell at all, do you think they're going to put it up at the top? Or they have this one book that seems to really get the clicks and really get the buys and shows Amazon that this is the best horse to bet on. Sure, they're going to put that one at the top. So let's look at the things that affect that and what we can do about it. Well, we're going to break this down. All of these here are actually ways to increase conversions. And we're going to do, the orange ones are the ones that we'll do at a time. But we have reviews. Now, if you imagine this, reviews are really important because, well, let's face it, it's social proof. If you have only one review and it's 1 star, like, good luck, and that's like, you're going to have a lot of very interested people that are just going to be like, whoa, 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 no thank you. But when they see all those reviews, that's social proof to them that other people have bet on you as a writer, and they were pleased with not only having paid the money and the time to read it, but to actually enjoy it enough to go and leave that review. So it's very important. Keyword conversion. This is clicks versus sales. This is a very important one because when somebody types in that keyword and Amazon shows your book, but they skip over your book and they select somebody else's and they purchase it, that sends a direct signal that in that case, the other book was the better one. And so you will start to move in rankings based off of what people are doing. So this is why targeting some keyword that kind of maybe sort of like your book probably will not help you, because even if you do steps to get yourself up to the top, the average shopper will reject it and move on, okay? And Amazon will figure this out. That's why there's some ways to kind of game it, I guess, but Amazon always figures it out because of this one simple step, okay? Pricing is a really big one, but it's also not as big as you think. So people will say, okay, well, 99 cents, right? That's got to be. But let me ask you this. How many times have you chosen a different book because it wasn't 99 cents? Like, if you were really interested, like you typed something in, you saw a great cover, and you were like, wow, that looks good. Oh, no, it's $2.99. No, thank you. All right? But what if I say it's $8.99? Yeah, keep looking. There's like 7 million books out there. I'll find another one, right? Unless it is like the greatest book of the world and it's my all-time favorite author. Like, I don't care. You got it. $8.99, here I come, okay? So pricing is one of those where I think I believe, and this is, I'm going to hit the I believe button, but I do believe that there's literally little to no difference in the market's mind between a $2.99 book, a $3.99 book, and maybe even up to a $4.99 book. So sometimes we authors cut ourselves short because we keep thinking we need to sell it for less and less and less to convince them. But from our studies, we're not seeing that much of a difference in the conversion rate based off of the price when you're that low. But when you start going $9.99, yeah, you're going to see a major drop-off. So think about that. But here's another one. KU or not to KU? That is the question. A lot of people have this belief that Amazon loves KU books better. And it's like when you select your book for KU, Kindle Unlimited, they're automatically going to put you right at the top and you're going to benefit from it. I don't think they do that automatically, but I do think that what makes Amazon more money and what indicates higher click-to-sales ratio does automatically make their algorithm put it to the top. Let's imagine that you're a KU shopper. You have signed up for KU, and you're searching for a book, and you see two books. One book is Kindle Unlimited, and another book is $2.99. Which one are you going to select? You're going to select the KU book because you already paid for that. That's pretty much free in your mind, whereas the other one you're going to have to pay for, and you're going to feel stupid for paying for KU when you're still paying for books. So the Amazon shopper is going to type in a keyword, and they're going to select the KU book over the other book just because they already paid for it. It's free to them. In Amazon's mind, we have proof that, yes, the two things that affect your Amazon bestseller rank is sales and downloads. So when that person actually clicks and downloads the KU book, in Amazon's search algorithm mind, that means that is just as good as a sale. So that book will benefit. That is why KU books are showing up near the top. Not because Amazon's marked them, because they could get into real legal trouble if they did that, but because it's showing that it is pleasing the customer more than the book that wasn't. All right? Finally, continuous sales versus spikes. Now, this was another experiment that we did, trying to prove this point. All right. Say, for example, your book will sell 1,000 copies. If your book sells most of that 1,000 in a giant spike, represented in the blue picture here, the blue line on the left, your rankings will benefit from that a little bit and then peter off real quick. But now look at the other picture, and in this case, you're selling still 1,000 books, but it's on a pretty good average, okay, over time. We find that it shows your rankings actually increase and keep increasing even though you've sold the same amount of books as the spike guy. This is huge because there are a lot of things. Brian Meeks talked about Amazon ads. I think that Amazon ads has a major effect on books because you're constantly sending traffic and you're constantly getting sales, which shows relevancy and life, and that Amazon acknowledges this and sees that this book still does well, and they still start showing you organically in other keyword terms over time. So a couple of things you can take from this. Number one, if you're doing a sales launch, you just launched your book, do not put all your eggs in one basket and have a major blowout day. Spread it out. Have plans to make sure your sales continue. Set up Amazon ads, set up advertisements so that even when your whole launch plan is done, you still have sales coming in. You will see that your relevancy still sticks and your sales and your rankings will still stay high naturally. All right, then finally, the last area I want to talk about is something that I try to coin, which is the symbiotic relationship. The symbiotic relationship is trying to understand how the book cover to title and subtitle to book description process works in the mind of a shopper. All right? The shopper goes to Amazon, and they type in a keyword phrase. Remember, this is the word or phrase that they truly believe represents the kind of book they're looking for. Sorry, working on a cold here. Now, we had a heat map study where we brought in a whole bunch of people, and there was a special computer, and it monitored their eyes, and we wanted to see how shoppers work on Amazon, okay? And it monitored where they looked and what happened. And what we found was the first thing a shopper does, which kind of makes sense, and it was very expensive makes sense, but they look right at the cover. They scroll right down. And when they finally see a cover that they think kind of looks cool, their eyes jolt over to the title and subtitle, a little bit down to the review, okay? They click, and immediately, very quickly, go right to the book description. This process here is, I have an idea of what I want, which cover makes me feel like it's showing me that, which title reaffirms this, and then what book description really hammers it home for me. That is an incredible symbiotic relationship, because if one part of that is broken, you may have the greatest book description in the world, you may have identified some amazing keywords, but if your book cover does not represent what they're thinking, it broke. If your title is ambiguous, and there's nothing to further it without a book cover that shows, it's broken. Let me show you. To go a bit further, I believe that the book cover and title and subtitle, okay, not the book description, just those two, because those two need to convince the person to click and read more. The cover, title, and subtitle need to answer these three things for nonfiction and fiction. For nonfiction, it needs to tell them, who is this for? It needs to tell them, what is it about? And what will it do for me? If you design a book cover that's this really cool image, but it does not answer those three questions, but it looks really neat, then you really got to make sure it's in the title and subtitle. But if you have it clear as day what it is in the cover, then you don't need to waste too much time on the subtitle. You can do a good title. But the key is you have to answer those three things. Because if you don't, you'll confuse the shopper, and when you confuse, you lose. The shopper will not click on you because they don't get it. They're not going to waste their time. They're not going to be like, oh, well, that might be a good book, but there's like 20 other books here, but I'm still going to click on this one just in case. No, they're quick. We are like want-it-now people. If I don't have those three answers, I will not waste the time to click on it. Fiction. Is this my kind of genre? Does it fit my description? What is it about? Let's jump into some examples here, okay? And by the way, if your book shows up on this example, I just don't say anything. Nobody will know. I took your name off it just in case, okay? Somebody wrote this book on essential writing structure. And the keywords that they showed up for, which I can only guess are the keywords that they were trying to target, was how to write blog posts, how to write speeches, how to write blog, oh, that must have been a typo on myself, there was another one, and how to write an essay. Let me ask you this. If you were somebody who needs to write blog posts, and your pain point is, I need to learn how to write better blog posts so that people actually care to read what I have on my website. And then I see this cover, which, by the way, you know, when you shrink it down on Amazon, it kind of looks like a toilet bowl. Right? And by the way, too, that's one of my tests on covers is anybody ever sends me a cover, I immediately shrink it down to this size so I can see what it looks like. And then all of a sudden, the little details and everything go away. And yeah, because that's what the shopper sees. So only look at your covers when it's that small, and then you'll know what your shopper will see and what matters and doesn't matter. So in this case, it looks like a giant toilet bowl. It says writing structure. Is this really for me? Is this really going to answer my need? And even if you put that subtitle in there, which again is just vague words, there's no way, even if that person's ranking #1 in Amazon for it, that I'm going to click on it, because that does not address my need. It doesn't answer those three questions, okay? Next, hitch. What the heck is hitch? I shrink this down, and we can kind of see in this bigger picture that that might be a cowboy. But when you shrink it down, that could be a Civil War soldier. That could be a, I mean, I would have guessed Civil War soldier because after all, you know, the ramparts, you know, bursting in the air or something. I don't know. Is this a love book? Is this a Western? Is this? I have zero clue as to what this book is about. I have no idea. And by the way, I think I typed in Western romance or something to find this example. But nope, no subtitle, nothing. I can't tell you if this fits my description. I can't tell you what the story's about. I can't tell you anything about it. So for fiction authors, I know that there's a little bit of anxiety about putting words in your subtitle. But let me show you where it really works. This person here wrote a lit RPG and game lit book. Okay? If they hadn't put that in the subtitle, that could have just been any old fantasy. That could have been just, okay, yep, female, you know, protagonist, looks like she's battling some spiders, cool. We're talking fantasy, awesome. But I'm a game lit fan. And if you guys sat in on the lit RPG discussion, you guys would know that there's some very different lit RPG types. I want it to be game lit. That's my kind. She has reaffirmed to me that this is my kind of book. And I now know what kind of story to expect. She's going to get my click, and she did, and she got the buy. So keep that in mind that maybe if you're not a famous author or you don't have a giant following, you might want to make it clear to the person who it is. Don't worry, I'm on it. So you can do your book description. You can use those words and put it together. Okay? You can remember those words are the words you believe that represent your kind of book. So you can come back and you can use that list and you can start to really create powerful book descriptions. And finally, we talked about the sources. We have Rocket publish those numbers as well as the Kindle calculator. And that's all I got. Yep. Cool.
I have to say I love this guy. Thank you. Thank you. Next up, John Truby. Give us 5 minutes to change over, and then we'll be live.